Our Bible verse for this week is Psalm 91, verses 9 through 13. Let's read it together. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, let you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Lesson 3. David and Mephibosheth. David remembered the promise that he had made to his dear friend Jonathan many years before. Jonathan had asked David to promise him that he would always show kindness to his descendants. David solemnly promised Jonathan that he would do that. Since Jonathan was dead and David was now king over Israel, David remembered this promise that he had made to his dear friend Jonathan. David wondered if any of Jonathan's sons were still living. Little Mephibosheth was 5 years old when tidings came from the battlefield that the Philistines had killed his grandfather, King Saul, and his father Jonathan. Mephibosheth's nurse was afraid that they would also kill little Mephibosheth, so she grabbed him and fled from the house. As they fled, Mephibosheth fell, breaking his ankle bones that never healed correctly. As a result, he was lame in his feet the rest of his life. As a grown man, Mephibosheth lived in Lodebar, a northerly town on the east side of the Jordan River, far away from the royal city of Jerusalem. He hoped that David would not discover him in such an out-of-the-way place. Besides being crippled, Mephibosheth lived in constant fear. He reasoned that if King David learned of his whereabouts, he would put him to death, because he was of Saul's royal family and could be considered a threat to the throne of King David. In those days, when someone not in the royal family took over the throne of a country, he usually killed all the males in the previous royal family so they could not challenge his right to the throne. David, of course, had promised Jonathan that he would not do this, but Mephibosheth did not know of David's promise to his father. David questioned his servants, "Is there anyone left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" His servants told David of a man named Ziba who had worked for Saul. He would be the one to ask. They sent for Ziba to appear before David. The king asked Ziba, "Is there not anyone left of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God?" Ziba answered, "Yes, there is a son of Jonathan still alive. His name is Mephibosheth, but he's crippled in both his feet." "Where is he?" demanded King David. "In Lodebar," answered Ziba. Learning the whereabouts of Jonathan's son, David commanded, "Bring Mephibosheth to me." Imagine how Mephibosheth must have felt when the messengers arrived at his house to bring him to King David. He was sure that the day he dreaded had come at last. Mephibosheth thought, "King David has discovered me. He knows that I'm a grandson of his enemy Saul, and he will surely kill me." In great fear, Mephibosheth left his home, thinking he would never see it again. By going to King David, he was sure he was going to his death. When Mephibosheth arrived at the royal palace, he was brought before King David. Trembling, he fell on his face before David. "Mephibosheth," said the king, happy to see one of Jonathan's sons. Bowing low, Mephibosheth answered trembling, "I am your servant." He expected to hear words condemning him to death. Instead, he heard David say, "Do not be afraid. I will show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake. He was a good friend of mine, and I'm going to restore to you all the land of your grandfather, King Saul. In fact, I want you to come and live with me here at my palace and eat at my table." Mephibosheth could not believe his ears. "Why are you being so kind to a dead dog like me?" he asked in amazement. David explained that he had made a promise to his father Jonathan many years before. He had promised Jonathan that he would always show kindness to Jonathan's family. David called Ziba and said, I am giving all that belonged to Saul and his family to his grandson. I want you and your sons to cultivate the land for him and to be his servants. He will stay in Jerusalem with me and eat at my table. Ziba, who had previously served King Saul, had 15 sons and 20 servants who served him. All of these were now to become Mephibosheth's servants and work for him. In a matter of minutes, Mephibosheth had been changed from a miserable, wretched, poor person into a wealthy man with lands and servants. No longer did he have to fear for his life. He was now taken right into the king's family. What a change! Instead of sentencing Mephibosheth to death, David showed mercy to him for his father's Jonathan's sake. This is a beautiful picture of God's great kindness to us. Though we are sinners, deserving eternal death in the lake of fire, God shows mercy to us for Jesus' sake. King David not only allowed Mephibosheth to live, but he also gave him land, servants, and the privilege of eating at the king's table. So God, for Jesus' sake, not only gives us eternal life and the hope of heaven, but he also gives us all kinds of spiritual blessings. We actually become God's children. God gives mercy and grace to those who come to him in faith. Mephibosheth was extremely thankful to David for his great kindness to him. Some years later, David had to flee from Jerusalem when his son Absalom tried to usurp his throne. As David fled, Ziba, Mephibosheth's servant, came to David with 2 donkeys, loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a jug of wine. King David asked Ziba, what does all this mean? Ziba responded, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, and the food is for you and your people. You will need it. Where is Mephibosheth? Asked David. He stayed in Jerusalem, said Ziba. He said that with you gone, he can now become the king over Israel. David was shocked and felt very disturbed to hear this report. After all he had done for Mephibosheth, was Mephibosheth now turning traitor to him? David did not realize that Ziba was lying. So David replied to Ziba, you may have all that belongs to Mephibosheth. Ziba prostrated himself before the king. He was very glad that David had believed his lie about Mephibosheth. Now all of Mephibosheth's possession will belong to him. After Absalom was defeated, King David began to make his way back to his throne in Jerusalem. Along with many others, Ziba, his sons, and his servants came out to meet King David and to help him bring his household over the Jordan River. As David neared Jerusalem, David saw someone else coming towards him. It was Mephibosheth riding on a donkey. He had not dressed his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed till he returned. Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? David asked him when they met. O king, my servant deceived me. I wanted Ziba to saddle a donkey for me so I could go with you. I couldn't do it myself, but Ziba deceived me and left me behind. More than that, he slandered me before you, O king. But you are like an angel of God. You can do with me what is good in your sight, because I have already received much more kindness than I have deserved. I will not complain to the king. Hearing this, King David said to Mephibosheth, you and Ziba must divide the land. Mephibosheth was very grateful when the king said that. It showed that King David really believed that he had been loyal to him. Let him take it all, Mephibosheth said humbly. The only thing I care about is that you have returned safely to your own house. Ziba had lied, deceived, and slandered Mephibosheth before the king in order to gain favor with King David. But how kindly David treated Mephibosheth. He extended mercy and grace to him and welcomed him as a son. David acted towards Mephibosheth as God acts towards us. What a wonderful, compassionate God we have.